We have less than 24 hours for Nvidia's earnings. And on today's episode, obviously, we're going to take a closer look at what investors should expect. I'm also going to share some of my thoughts of when I believe the stock could go up, could go down, or could stay pretty much flat. Now, we also do have a lot of information impacting the overall semiconductor stock. I mean, Coreweave was up roughly 20% on the day. It is insane. The stock got hit with a downgrade. We also got some other updates about some potential Japan trade deal discussions and how it could be very bullish for the semiconductor market. And there is a lot of Nvidia news to cover. So let's take a closer look in today's episode. All right, so the first thing I want to take a closer look at is here Coreweave. The stock, like I mentioned in the intro, was up roughly 20%. This stock is destroying the market up, and I'm still going to stand with what I said, where I see a growth opportunity for Coreweave in the future. In the short term, this is going to be massive volatile, where I don't mind dollar cost averaging out of the stock with the position that I got in at a very, very low entry. My cost basis is below about $40.40. And this is one that I don't mind dollar cost averaging at these price points. Now, the first thing I want to talk about Coreweave is they did appoint a new vice president for government affairs. Now, this is interesting, right? Because Coreweave, this could be one of the reasons maybe the stock has been bullish today. It does open up kind of this new market opportunity. Normally, Coreweave has been a big player that's providing these AI computes for cloud server providers and these big customers. But now it seems with this potential that they appointed Carl Hosthauser as vice president of government affairs, it shows that there is the optionality that U.S. governments or other types of governments could be a massive customer of AI infrastructure needs from Coreweave. So this like I mentioned, could be seen as a massive growth opportunity for Coreweave as it does kind of enter a new market. And throughout this press release, it does mention that this company has actually taken a lot of new strategic hires to overall grow the different types of revenue avenues that it can see or it can potentially grow into. So I can see why the market might be excited about this, but the stock also got hit with a downgrade today. So Barclay right now did downgrade the stock to equal weight from overweight, but it did increase the price target. The price target went from $70 to $100. With today's stock prices, that is still about a 15% downside, maybe a little bit more with the returns we saw earlier today. But we can see that regardless, $100 price point on this company is still pretty impressive, especially for those that got into this stock just about a month ago. Now, the main reason for the downgrade has nothing to do except one thing: valuation. Valuation is the most important thing here for this downgrade, because right now there is no close comparable peer to this group that can be used to kind of determine what is a proper valuation for this type of business. Does one price this as a complete AI infrastructure bare metal, which is not, or does someone price this as if they were pricing an Amazon AWS or a Google Cloud or a kind of Microsoft Azure, which at the moment is not there really either, right? So the main thing here is that they do see the growth potential of things like generative AI, but unfortunately the valuation aspect of it is still pretty hard, and that's the reason for the downgrade. So I want to say that downgrade isn't that bad if valuation is the biggest concern. Like I've mentioned in the past, Coreweave is not a stock I'm willing to purchase at these levels. But again, I was really lucky to kind of get in the cost basis very low. My risk to reward ratio is not there. I'm not saying the stock can't continue to go higher. We can continue to see that the stock can continue to go higher. But the higher it goes with not much new information since earnings, I believe the risk to reward ratio is not in my favor to add on right now. Again, doesn't mean the stock is going to drop, but my risk to reward ratio is dropping. Now, talking about semiconductor stocks doing really well, even though Coreweave is not a semiconductor, is definitely influenced by that space. But we did see great green day around the market today. A lot of semiconductor stocks were actually up. We can see Air Technologies was up nearly 12%. NVMI, Nova Ltd, which is a semiconductor equipment, up 8%. Indie Semiconductor up 7%. ARM up 5%. Marvell up 5%. on microchip up nearly 5% each as well. So a very great day for the semiconductor market. The only thing happening right now is just the easements of the trade deal in EU, kind of creating this bullish sentiment globally. I don't think there was any individual aspect. I do want to say for some of these semiconductor players, Europe is really big in two main markets, the automotive market and the industrial robotics market. So I do believe maybe that's why Indie and companies like On were up a nice amount, as those do kind of focus within those markets. Air Technologies, for example, is a huge semiconductor company that provides equipment for the automotive chip solution market. So I do believe maybe some of these were a little bit more fueled because of the EU trade tension easing a little bit, or the pausing, or the extension happening a little bit longer. And I think the market was pretty excited about that. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is Nvidia. And I mentioned I want to talk about how the different types of ways Nvidia can go on earnings tomorrow, right? There's three ways. The stock can go down, the stock can pretty much be flat, or the stock can go up. And I'm going to kind of explain those. But let me just take a step back and let me just say, as a long term investor of Nvidia, I could care less how the stock moves tomorrow, because in the long term, there are still massive tailwinds that I don't care how the stock reacts tomorrow. If the stock drops 10, 15%, I'm not saying it is, I would see that as a massive buying opportunity. And I think investors should do that the same, because look at these tailwinds. Big tech is still spending heavy capex on AI, and that's not changing anytime soon because AI innovations continues. We saw kind of Google I/O, we saw kind of the new announcements from all these AI players. AI innovation is still in early innings, and that's going to fuel kind of that point one that I made. Next is we had the UAE trade deal and new Stargate projects of massive AI investments. How can you not be excited about that? Massive AI investments by AI players, your non-cloud server providers. You hear of xAI building a 1 million GPU cluster. You don't think some of the other AI companies that don't own a cloud server provider aren't doing the same thing? You have sovereign AI, things like UAE, and we're going to see some other players globally are also trying to do the same thing of building massive AI infrastructures for their countries. And then not only that, you have new cloud players like Nebius, Coreweave, and other kind of cloud server providers or neo cloud server providers that are also going to be investing heavily on capital expenditure. So no matter what happens tomorrow, Nvidia is the GOAT at the moment. Nvidia is dominating in forms of competition. There's no one there right now. So obviously that can change. This is a cutthroat environment where you have to keep innovating. At the moment, Nvidia is innovating, and those long-term tailwinds, in my opinion, are all bullish reasons for Nvidia in the future. So again, I wanted to say that before we move on to the next points. Now, I kind of want to explain what investors or the street is worried about for this quarter, and what I believe is going to be the biggest factor of where the stock moves. The main question is, can the company beat guidance after losing the Chinese market? Now, remember, NVIDIA can no longer send the H20. The H20 is banned. So without that market, how is guidance going to look? How is the color on the future revenue going to look for this business? So some things to note. First thing is this shouldn't impact quarter one numbers because it was not in place during that numbers, but it will be a headwind for quarter two and beyond. Some other things, we did see that kind of UAE announcement that I talked about in the previous slide, but that UAE revenue is unlikely to impact this guidance either, because most of those data centers are planned out for at least later within the next 12 months. And I don't think those orders are coming in just yet, or they're sending those orders just yet to recognize them as revenue. So UAE revenue is unlikely, in my opinion, to impact this guidance either. Maybe it could for the upcoming quarter. And another question here is, we do have some questions. If will the company make a new Chinese chip? These are rumors that we're hearing, and this is going to be something that is going to be very important to get a clear answer during the earnings call. Now, because of this worry, analysts have actually reduced the guidance estimates to around $46 billion. And I think this is a great segue to the sponsor of today's episode. This is FinChat.io. This is my favorite data platform right now. You can get 15% off FinChat.io/Jose. And we're going to see, I mean, if you're curious on how to get some great numbers here. So here on FinChat.io, I want to just take a closer look at how, I just want to show how quickly I can get some information. So in financials, for example, if I am curious on ratios, some of those ratios could be trailing valuations. I kind of tend to follow forward valuation. So forward valuation, you can see for the next 12 months, forward PE ratio is about 32.5. Found that pretty quickly. If we want to look at segments, KPIs pretty quickly, data center revenue, gaming revenue is all very quickly with just a few clicks. Other thing, estimates. I mean, we're going to look at revenue here. We can look at revenue estimates in forms of what analysts are expecting. I want to look at more quarterly. Here you can also kind of look at estimates on things like free cash flow, earnings per share, price targets, and the list goes on and on. So if you want a great data platform for a great price, make sure to check out finchat.io/Jose. Now, kind of jumping into what we're seeing right now is these earnings, and actually, I don't know if I covered, and I mentioned analysts have reduced guidance estimates of revenue expectations due to the H20 ban, and that's what I was kind of trying to show there. But I think this earnings is going to be a lot different than some other earnings that NVIDIA has had. Because in my opinion, this earnings, only NVIDIA can give the actual answer to the problem. In the past earnings, we've actually had past issues for NVIDIA. For example, last quarter was the DeepSeek drama. The quarter before that was AI demand. And some quarters have been kind of like the Hopper versus Blackwell transition. But every of those issues were either answered by other earnings. For example, the DeepSeek, AI demand, and all these three, we actually got the real answer out of all these questions during the hyperscale when the hyperscales reported, when like an Amazon, Google, or those big players reported earnings. We already understood kind of what it meant for Nvidia. Now this quarter, like I mentioned, the big question is the Chinese space and how this market loss can truly impact the stock. And no other player can answer this question for NVIDIA. So for this earnings, I do believe a lot is going to be dependent on the Q&A session and on the kind of color that NVIDIA provides for the Chinese market. Now, here is my very quick top line on when I think the stock will fall, when I think the stock will be flat, and when I think the stock will jump. Like I mentioned earlier, regardless, I don't care, as the stock has so many tailwinds, like we saw earlier on in this episode. But when do I think the stock will jump? If we do see about a $2 billion beat on guidance compared to what the market is expecting, remember the market is expecting somewhere around $46 billion. If we get closer to $48 billion on guidance, which I do believe is possible, I do believe the stock will jump as the market will see, hey, look, the Chinese market was good, but look, right now, NVIDIA is seeing that guidance and that strong demand all over the world. Now, when I think the stock will be flat is if the company beats on guidance by about $1 billion. $1 billion is still insane, but the stock has kind of rallied a nice amount in the past few days that I would think maybe the stock won't react too much, even with the small beat like that. On all these scenarios, let me just say on all these scenarios, I do believe NVIDIA beats on both revenue and earnings per share for quarter one on non-GAAP basis, because remember, we are taking that one hit. And if you want a deeper dive on earnings preview, make sure to check out an episode I did on Saturday. This is more of a very top level overview. And again, if you're getting a lot of information here, make sure to hit the thumbs up, make sure to hit the subscribe button, as all this information is completely free. And I'm trying to hit 75,000 subs by the end of the year. Again, check out finchat.io/Jose for my special offer to the community. Now, the question is when I think the stock will fall. And there are two scenarios when I think the stock will fall. And both of them, I think, need to happen together. First is the guidance that the company does not meet the new reduced expectations. Remember, I mentioned analysts reduced the expectations for this upcoming quarter in forms of guidance. If NVIDIA doesn't meet that new expectation, which was reduced, I think the stock price could drop down dramatically. The other time is if we get no clear answers about the Chinese market, no clear answers, and if we get more of uncertainties, if we end up if we end up after the call with more questions about the Chinese market than answers, then I do believe that uncertainty will kind of create some negative tailwinds for Nvidia's stock price. Now, again, regardless, I don't care. The stock has so many tailwinds that no matter how the stock moves tomorrow, I believe very, very bullish in the long term style of this company. Now, there are a few other things that I want to cover in today's episode. I hope you guys are enjoying it. Next, we have on May 27th, NVIDIA kind of rehashed some information a little bit, but NVIDIA and Google collaborate to serve significant user queries for Gemini models across Vertex AI and Google Distributed Cloud. So NVIDIA Blackwell is in production in Google Cloud. We're seeing Google Cloud already is using the NVIDIA's B200 and the GB200 NVL72 system. The more important one is Google Gemini can now be deployed on-premise with NVIDIA Blackwell on Google Distributed Cloud. So there are certain companies that just because of customer data, because of strict data laws or regulatory issues, they can't use the cloud market or certain solutions in that space. So they still need to go on-premise. Now, to do this, you need to have a high-power AI GPU. To me, this is pretty funny because Google designs their own TPU, and if they want to distribute the Google Gemini market, why not just start creating these servers out of TPUs? But this is just showcasing that NVIDIA is still the lead. So right now, there are massive NVIDIA Blackwell platforms coming to Google Distributed Cloud, which now you can kind of have that Google's Cloud fully managed solutions on premise with a lot of their solutions. So that is showing that Google needs NVIDIA to continue to expand in the AI market. And no matter how much you want to believe that Google is self-dependent on its TPUs for its AI models, if it wants to expand into this space, guess who it needs to call? It needs to call NVIDIA. Now, some other things is on May 27th, we did see kind of there's actually a YouTube video. I definitely would have other people kind of want to watch. If you want to watch it, it's about a 1 minute long, but it's how Dell Technologies is kind of building these massive AI servers. Now, a few things from this press release that I think investors should know is Dell projected that its AI server business will grow at least $15 billion this year. And Dell servers with NVIDIA GB200s are shipping at scale for a variety of customers, such as Coreweave's new NVL72 system. One of Dell's US factory can ship thousands of NVIDIA Blackwell GPUs to customers in a week. It's why they were choosing to be one of their largest customers to deploy a 100,000 NVIDIA GPU system in just 6 weeks. So Dell doing really well here, it seems, with the GB200 NVL72. It also kind of gives a confirmation that the NVL72 is shipping really, really strongly already, and Coreweave is definitely a big winner. Now, the final NVIDIA news before we move into Japan, there are reports by Financial Times that NVIDIA suppliers resolve AI rack issue, and it does mean that the GB300, we have been hearing about this, we've talked a lot about this in this channel, where the GB300 is seeing some crazy demand. In my opinion, the Grace Blackwell 200 was going to be the product, right? The system to beat. It seems the GB300, the GB200 is amazing, but the GB300 is going to be the real revenue maker for this company for this fiscal year, and it's coming in Q3 at full force. So that gets me pretty excited. Now, the final topic we have here is there are reports by an Asahi newspaper reporting that Japan has proposed purchasing billions of dollars worth of U.S. semiconductor products during ongoing tariffs negotiations. Right now, it is citing an unidentified source. Now, what I think this is crazy is right now, one of the greatest assets that the United States market has is AI infrastructure and AI solutions. I mean, we saw the Stargate project being used in UAE. That is thanks to AI innovations in the United States from OpenAI's kind of AI innovation in the in the model world to Nvidia, a U.S. company's assets of being a leader in the AI hardware space, the semiconductor solution. So I think right now what is would be great for the U.S. to be negotiating is to make sure you buy a lot of semiconductor solutions from U.S. companies, aka Nvidia. So I do believe what we're gonna start to see with these trade deals once we start appearing is very similar to what we saw with UAE. Is when a trade deal gets announced, you're gonna start to see massive announcements of AI investments. AI investments, can you know who that benefits? That benefits the semiconductor players, and you're going to start to see maybe a Stargate project. I wouldn't be surprised. We have a Stargate project in the United States. We now have a Stargate project in UAE. I'm going to expect we're going to have a Stargate project in Japan as well. Obviously, SoftBank is, I believe, a Japanese originated company, and they are a big believer of the AI space. So why don't we have a Stargate project in Japan just yet? Maybe we're just waiting for this trade deal. And if it does happen, make sure to come back to this video and say, Jose, how did you know this was going to happen? Well, take care, guys. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Tomorrow's is going to be very busy with Nvidia earnings. So make sure to stay tuned to this channel, and hopefully we can get 75,000 subs by the end of the year. Peace out.